Hello, and welcome back to the Digestible Podcast. I'm Staci.
And I'm Melissa.
And here at Digestible, we give you the information you want in the perfect amount of time for your busy life. And we make sure the information is very easily digestible. Get it?
Staci and I both love to read the latest research and books by the experts and attend conferences and meet those experts and talk about health and nutrition all day long.
So Missy and I were really finding that in our professional and personal lives, people wanted to know what to do, but they didn't really want to read all the things that were like, here, read this book and this will explain why, or watch this, or listen to this podcast. They really just wanted to know what and why, but in like a short little nugget. So thus Digestible was born, and it is our gift to the world to give you 25 to 30 minutes of really good information of what you can do and why without having to invest a ton of time, because we've already invested the time for you.
Exactly. So we're back again with Julia Johnson because she had so much useful information for us that we decided to split this up into 2 episodes for you. So just to recap briefly, Julia Johnson is the head of Food Business USA for Compassion in World Farming. She works to drive improvements in animal welfare and environmental sustainability in our food system.
And just as a reminder, Compassion in World Farming demands better animal welfare from top food companies. And in this episode, the first episode we covered chicken and eggs, which are hot topics right now. And then in this episode, we dove deep into beef, pork, fish, and dairy. And I think it's really interesting to learn about how these animals spend their lives before they get to our plate.
Yeah.
And that if you could see the animal alive, would you want that animal to end up on your plate?
Right. Like the quality of their life, it's from the way she describes it, if you could visualize it, you'd be like, I'm not going to eat that.
Exactly. Like you want the happy animal, the animal that's had a really good, healthy life. You want to eat something that's healthy. Right. And is the sickly looking animal that's being mass produced, is that healthy for you? So we're going to learn a little bit about how these animals are raised and how to find the healthiest animals around. It's easier than you think.
Yes, so we're really excited. We're going to get to it. Let's go. Let's dive into our second episode with Julia Johnson.
There's kind of 2 tracks that I like to think about and explain for the pork industry. So important terms would be a sow or a mother pig, and then what we refer to as meat pigs or pigs that are raised for meat. So the conventional way of pork production is that a sow will be impregnated and she will go in what's called a gestation crate. And it's about 7 feet by 2 feet. And to me, it's the most inhumane form of confinement for an animal. She's not even able to turn around. She can literally just stand up and lay down. And even that is really uncomfortable. So again, good news that there's a little bit of legislation that has helped, and we've also seen companies really take a stance more on this that from other species and proteins on the marketplace. So from that, once she is ready to give birth or farrow, she's then conventionally transported to what's called a farrowing crate. So it's about the same size, but there's a little bit of room for the piglets to get out and move around. So she's still unable to turn around or lay down comfortably and even just stretch her limbs and her legs. It's so awful. So this is where these certifications really come into play. So looking at GAP or Global Animal Partnership, Certified Humane, and also one that we haven't talked about is Animal Welfare Approved. These are really meaningful certifications out there that ban the use of gestation crates and other forms of confinement for other species. I think that's a good way to kind of explain the pork industry, and this is where legislation has also played a really positive role, is that there have been multiple states that have banned the use of extreme confinement.
Is it cheaper for them to raise them confined? Is that why? Is it the space?
And why?
Yeah. All great questions. So it definitely is cheaper. It has historically been cheaper. But what we found is that the production of the more humane products where they're able to turn around allows for a bigger, it's like a pen instead of a crate. They can be housed individually, or they could be what's called group housed. So they could be housed with other sows. So it historically, yes, it was cheaper because you could put more pigs in a confined area. But we've seen that with as anything happens, there's a large investment at the beginning, but then the price eventually does come down. And the most recent statistic that I saw was in California, it was a 5 cent difference on products. So it's marginal. And I haven't heard anything about a major pork shortage in
I
California.
think people would be willing to pay 5 cents more to know
Yeah.
that the pork they're buying was
I
happier.
think so. And I think,
Right.
especially when you see the photos, it is the most grim environment for these intelligent animals. I mean, sows are so smart, and I think they're ranked in the top 5, if not the top 3 smartest animals.
So that's why I very rarely ever purchase pork, because I had read that a pig has the intelligence of a 3-year-old human and that they're treated so poorly. And I'm like, I can't
It's heartbreaking.
buy that.
It's really heartbreaking. And that issue is what got me into this work, because when I saw it, you can't unsee it for me. And it really, to be able to see a pork product on your plate and then think about where it came from, it's just heartbreaking. So there is good news that there are some farmers and producers out there. One of my favorite brands is Nyman Ranch. They're a really great, meaningful pork company.
I've heard of Nyman Ranch.
They're really great, and they're certified humane, so thinking about that third-party certification. But they also really do a lot for their farmers, and they have incredible scholarship programs and young farmer foundations. They're just doing a lot of really great work for the American farmer directly. And you don't have to be big. You could have 2 to 5 mama sows and really be in the program, which is unheard of in the traditional pork industry. But it's shifting that mindset from efficiency over to being more holistic and really thinking about, why is food cheap, and do we really want to think about putting our money there? And so being able to support farmers that are doing right by the animals, and then therefore doing right by the farmers. It's a great company.
White Oak Pastures is also great. They're out of I think Louisiana.
White Oak
maybe?
Pastures is in a small town called Bluffton, Georgia. And I'm glad you brought them up. They're one of my favorites.
I love the story of that guy.
They're so great. And
Tell the story. I don't know the story.
yeah, so it actually started with animal welfare. So Will Harris is a multi-generational farmer down in Bluffton, Georgia. It's about 3-4 hours south of Atlanta. And it's a dot on the map. And you would never know that you were even passing it. It's such a small community. And he was traditionally raising cattle in the conventional model. And it was one day he told me the story that it was loading too many cattle into a truck for transport to go be finished in a feedlot elsewhere. And he just said, I can't do this anymore. This is inhumane, and we have to come up with a different way. And so he started thinking differently about how can we finish cattle here? How can we raise them on grass? And then he started thinking more holistically about if should we just have cattle, or should we take care of the weed problem that goats could take care of? And then if there was a different ecological problem, in quotes, how do we use species in a multi-paddock rotational way to really make it a healthy ecosystem? And I encourage you and the listeners to look them up on YouTube. There's so many great resources there. And one of the most powerful ones is that his operation, they don't use any herbicides or pesticides, nothing synthetic on their products and their property. And you can see it in the water quality. So there's this great video of in the river. They're surrounded by conventional row cropping production. And from their farm, you can see how clear the water is, and you can literally see the property line of when all of the conventional product from losing topsoil due to degradation of the soil over the years, you can literally see the color difference in the water. It's incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they're really
Wow,
great.
I gotta look
And
at
I
that
think
video.
that's a really good example of how helping the animals actually helps the farmers, and it helps the land as well, and the community. So thinking about those 3 pillars of land, animal, community is something that's really meaningful.
Okay, so you mentioned transport. Are all animals transported? I'm always curious. Whenever I'm on the highway and I see the transport trucks, I get so sad. Do they know where they're going, or do they exhibit signs of distress when they have to be loaded in there?
It's very
And
stressful.
Does anyone do any of them get processed on the farm, or that's not a thing?
There is some efforts for on-farm slaughter. We see that more with the smaller operations, and I think it's actually really great because it does decrease that kind of stress. So White Oak Pastures is one where they actually own their own processing plant, and the animals, if they do have to transport, it's maybe 15 minutes. It's very small. It's very low stress. But the majority of these animals are shipped hours at a time to be transported. And it can be really stressful. So they go from this sterile environment for a few months indoors, and then they get pushed onto a truck, and then they get shipped to a processing plant. And so it can be very stressful. There has been really great development of animal welfare science led by Dr. Temple Grandin. She's out of Colorado State University. And that started also with cattle, and thinking, because she has autism, she was able to think differently. And at the time, it was really revolutionary to think almost like a cow and see shadows and lights and reflections in a way that was causing animals to spook and be stressed. And even changing the way that the animals traveled in the plants. So instead of a straight line, which is what we would think would be most efficient, she created this design of it swerving and curving, and that helped the animals be really calm. And so she always says that if there's vocalization, that an animal is stressed, and the processing plant should be silent. So we've seen a lot of good developments there, but there's definitely still ways to go for other species.
And you have to imagine, just like with us, when we go through a great amount of stress, our body releases hormones into our bloodstream, and blood runs through all parts of our body, including our muscles and everything. So if that's happening with them, and they've got all these like distress hormones going through their system, and then they're slaughtered, I wonder how it impacts us as humans when we eat them.
It has to have an impact on meat quality. Yeah, and I know there's been studies out there for sure. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, let's talk about the cows. Should we talk about beef for a bit? Okay.
Yes. So cattle in the United States, beef cattle, there's kind of two tracks again with this kind of production. So there's what's called the cow-calf operation. So when you're driving through New England or through the South, you'll see a lot of pastoral settings, and that tends to be the cow-calf operation, meaning the mama cow and her calf. And they're on there for about, I would say, a half to maybe 2/3 of their life, depending on the breed it's mostly Black Angus, but depending on the breed and the quality of the grass and how fast these calves are growing. And then they get shipped to a finishing lot or a feed yard. And so that's where they're fed primarily a corn-based diet. And that's where they're also given routine antibiotics and hormones, and that helps them with their growth development. That leads to a lot of gut issues with them, and it can cause a lot of problems. And then there's also the element of soreness in their feet because they're standing in mud and manure all day. So there's a lot of problems when it comes to health and welfare in the feedlot operation. That tends to be the major tract. And what we're seeing in the marketplace is more labels around grass-fed and organic. And grass-fed it's good. It's a good step. But I think there's also this perception that they're going to be hooves on grass with it, which that's not always the case.
Right. Like you can feed cows grass in confinement.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So we need to look for, what do we need to look for?
So one thing that I love to look for when it comes to different certifications is the American Grass-Fed Association, or AGA. And it's a really easy label that you see. It's a green circle and it has grass on it. And you'll see that they have standards for all species, but really where I see it is with beef and dairy cattle products. That's where we see it quite a bit. And what I love about that one is that it also certifies that hooves were on the ground in the United States. And what we're seeing in the grass-fed marketplace is there is a huge competition with the import market from New Zealand and Australia. And that's great that these farmers have access to this new market. But I think a lot of people, when they buy a product, especially if it says product of the USA, it can be really misleading because the animals weren't necessarily raised in the United States. So that's where the American Grass-Fed Association certification.
Interesting. Because I notice that when I buy my organic grass-fed packaged ground beef from Trader Joe's, let's say, it's often not a product of the USA.
Yeah, it's usually imported.
So
it was like that at Whole Foods for a little while too. I think we're starting to see
So what does that look like in the other countries that we're importing from? Like, do you know what their conditions are like there?
They do have pretty good conditions. So I'll say it's the grass-fed market. It is more holistic, and the animals are outside. They do have a good quality of life. So I think overall it shows, from a very simplistic understanding, it shows that there's consumer demand in this area. And so if that's the only product that you have, I would encourage you to buy it to show Walmart and Kroger and whomever else that the public wants this. But I really think being able to support those farmers that are American based, because the marketplace is so small and they're dealing with a lot of mislabels and confusing labels out there.
So we want to see the AGA, and do we want to see 100% pasture raised?
So it's
100% grass fed and finished?
So there's the grass fed piece, and then there's grass finished, which is really great. There's also pasture raised, so they could be fed a corn or meal based diet on pasture. So again, it's good. It's a good step. But I think that's where these certifications really come into play.
Okay, so AGA
it seems like there's a lot of loopholes that you would never know or consider. I never thought about the fact that you could say grass-fed while just feeding them the grass while they're in concrete.
Yeah.
And I don't know how common that's happening, but I think the fact that the loophole exists, I hate to be a cynic about this, but corporations are going to take advantage of any loophole that they have. That's just the reality. So how can they produce a product for the cheapest to make the most money on it? That's where we see all of these misleading claims. And that's where the federal government has failed us to not have stronger regulation around these claims. It's really allowed these companies to dictate what these definitions mean. So that's why these certifications are really good. And what I love about the AGA is that they're supporting American farmers, and they verify that the animal was born, raised, and harvested in the United States, and that they're only fed a grass and forage diet.
Okay, so AGA or farmers market, maybe even visit their farm, because you can do that.
Yeah.
In Ann Arbor, they sell some. We have the Farm Stop, which is wonderful. It's all locally raised everything, vegetables and meat products and all these things, and they have the name of the farm on them, and sometimes the farmers like, come to our farm, or they'll be at the farmers market. And so I know a couple local places that do a great job, and I've seen it. But it's when you go, frankly, we go to the bigger grocery store more because we can get more of what we need there.
I'm the same way.
Yeah,
I'm the
and
same
so
way.
we want to encourage so when they say, when you're checking out at the grocery store, they say, did you find everything you're looking for today? Like, no, I did not see any AGA certified beef. I'd like to see that, please. Say that.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think emailing corporate, and they listen to that. And I think also talking to the store manager, it really is powerful. And I think that that's where we can vote with our fork and vote at every time we go to the grocery store and really ask for this. That's what's going to create demand.
So if we could do a breakdown, I'm going to the grocery store, I'm buying eggs, I'm buying chicken, I'm buying some pork, and I'm buying some beef. What am I looking for on my eggs? What's the best thing I can be looking for?
I usually look for certified humane and pasture raised.
Okay. I'm buying some chicken. What's the best thing I can look for the chicken?
The Better Chicken Project certification.
The pork?
Certified humane.
The beef?
AGA. Or you can also do certified humane and Global Animal Partnership and Animal Welfare Approved. But if the grass-fed piece is the most important to you, go with the American Grass-Fed Association.
Okay.
Excellent.
And talk to our grocers. Apparently, we have to talk to the grocer.
Please, when you go to your grocery store, look for those certifications. It'll make us all a lot healthier.
I think amidst the pandemic, so much e-commerce took off that a lot of farmers, they're shipping nationwide or even locally. So we mentioned White Oak Pastures. You can go and order all of their products online, and they also have great non-food products too. So they take beef tallow and they turn it into lotion, and they have purses that they take the hide from. They are as near.
Talk to me about the beef tallow. The beef tallow is all over social media.
Is. Yeah.
Is the beef tallow good or not good?
I think what it is,
the dermatologists say no, and the beef farmers, I think, say yes. Tell us about it.
I don't know about the dermatologists. I'm always skeptical about some of these things. But what I do, I love White Oak Pastures tallow lotion. I use it almost every day on my face and my hands. I love it. And they use essential oils. What I like about it is that it's clean and that it's not synthetic. So that's my motivation for these things.
That's big.
It comes from a natural source.
EWG rated it yet? The Environmental Working Group, have they rated it?
I don't know. Oh, yeah. Well, I can talk a little bit about just some of the resources that we have on our website. So we have a Learn the Labels guide, and it covers all of the different certifications that we've talked about today. And it's a really easy downloadable sheet that you can take around. And then you can also even send it to the grocery store as well. So say, like, these are the products that I'm looking for that have these different seals. So that's always a tool that you can use. And we are a nonprofit. We don't accept any money from corporations. We're all foundation and donation based. If someone was interested, we're always happy to have a monthly donor or a one-time giver, but that's not the reason I'm on here at all. It's very much just how we operate as a nonprofit.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
And you're affecting change all over the world.
Our organization is, yeah. It's incredible to see what has changed. And we try to rank our impact based on animals and the volume of meat, dairy, and eggs. We kind of have an internal converter, I guess I would say, based on the volume of these products and what that means for animals' lives. And our food business program is estimated to impact over 3 billion animals a year. So it's really meaningful.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It's really meaningful and impactful work. And to be able to see the impact on the shelves or on a meal kit company or at a restaurant, it's really powerful.
Would it be easier to affect change if people ate less meat?
That is one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about. So I think there is something, I like to call it a plant-forward diet. So it doesn't necessarily have to be plant-based. But I think the volume that we're consuming animal products it doesn't need to be that way. I don't want to tell anyone what they can and can't eat. That's not my MO at all. But I do think we have to reflect a little bit more and think about the volume of products. And even if we were to be able to decrease an animal product one time a day, that actually does have an impact on an animal's life elsewhere. So I think there's that model of less and better is a really good way to think about it. So if we're willing to spend a little bit more on these products where an animal is living outside, they're healthier, they're able to walk and turn around and let a pig be a pig or let a chicken be a chicken, it does have an impact. And I think that eating a little bit less really is powerful as well. And it also shows in the marketplace that there's a real demand for a more plant-forward diet. And I think that's something that people are looking for. They want to be healthier. And what we're seeing consistently, and the food industry is watching this, is who's the future consumer by 2025 and by 2035, by 2045. And so there's a real attention to the millennial and Gen Z consumer and what they're looking for. And consistently, it's values-based food. People want to know the story behind their food. They want to feel that it's healthier. And that's a real opportunity for these companies. Instead of just greenwashing, actually making a difference to meet the consumer demand. And people will follow. They absolutely will. So I think that's an opportunity too, to look at where our trends are going.
We didn't talk about milk.
Is there something about milk on your website? Do they talk about
There are guides for dairy cows, yeah. So with the typical dairy production, again, it was focused really on efficiency. So how can we select the breeds of cows that are going to produce the most amount of milk in the shortest amount of time? So this has led to a lot of welfare problems. And sometimes dairy cows only live to 2 years, and they actually have a natural lifespan of up to 25 potentially, depending on the different breeds. So it's this exhaustion of this animal. And I'm not a mom, but I think a lot of moms can relate to this, of using their body so much and producing the amount of milk. And the thing that is the most heartbreaking about the dairy industry to me is the immediate cow-calf separation. So as soon as the calf is born, that baby is immediately taken away so we can utilize the milk from the mother cow. And that's something that's really hard and it's painful. And that's where you see sometimes those white calf hutches. If you're driving in rural America, sometimes you'll see those. That's for those calves that were taken from their mothers and then they're raised. And the males will usually be separated and will be turned into meat. And then also the female calves will be, some of them will stay and they'll be used for future milk production. So it can be, we're seeing, there's kind of two models for how these farms are structured. There's smaller farms, which is good. And there's maybe 50 to 150, 200 cows that's throughout New England and the mid-Atlantic area. And then more out west is the mega dairies, and they can house thousands of cows. And most of them are in what's called free stalls versus tie stalls. So tie stalls are where a cow she has a chain or a rope around her neck and she's just standing all day. And then other ones, she gets milked a few times a day and then she goes back. So she pretty much can just stand up and lay down and then she's just eating all day. So that's the tie stall, and that's a big welfare issue that we see for dairy production. So we want to encourage any producers to shift away from that. And there are good options. So there's more of the freestall, or really when we can think about the different certifications, we look at more pasture raised options. So the freestalls, they tend to still be indoors in an indoor structure, and they sometimes have open siding, and the cows can walk around and they can lay down in what's called a freestall. So it's a little bit better, but it's still very much a big mega dairy. So when we think about the environmental impacts of that, it can be really problematic.
So what are we looking for on our milk carton?
So it's animal welfare approved, certified humane, and then the American Grass-Fed Association. Those are the key ones we recommend.
Great. Why does Irish butter taste better than our butter? Is there a reason?
I think
are those cows happier?
I know I would be happier in Ireland. I love Ireland. But I think the real key comes down to the diet that these animals are eating. They're outdoors, they're eating grass or they're eating hay and forage, and that plays a real impact. And that's something that you can visually see with dairy products as well as egg products. It's kind of like the egg yolk. You can really see the difference in the quality of the life for the animal. There's a really
quality of life equals better tasting food.
It totally does. And there's a product that I love. It's called Truly Grass-Fed. I saw it in Publix recently when I was in Kentucky visiting my family. And that one is animal welfare approved. And the butter is so good. I mean, it's almost orange. I absolutely love it. It's so good.
Wow. It's called Truly?
And that's
Okay.
speaking
Okay.
of
What about here locally? What do you buy here locally for butter and
There's a butter that's out of New Zealand. I can't remember the name of it, but if you can't find a certified product, I would look for different claims. So things like grass-fed or grass-finished or pasture-raised, that's a step in the right direction for dairy products. But
Okay.
dairy's harder
Yeah.
for sure. And I would say the organic standard is actually a little bit better than other products. And so they require 120 days of pasture for the animals. So thinking more of like the summer period. And then also no antibiotics or hormones
120 days per year or total?
during the year.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really the growing
Great.
season and, the spring and summer.
Okay.
And I
Great.
can't remember, does your organization deal with fish too?
We do.
Are you guys part of the seafood? I thought I remembered seeing that on the website.
We
Okay.
do.
Tell me about that, because I do eat seafood, and so I do prefer to get wild caught when I can.
That one
But, the grocery store, they'll tell you, they're like, oh no, this is like wild farmed. What are the words they use?
I love it. No, seafood is even more confusing. So there's wild caught, there's line caught, there's farm raised, there's farm fresh, there's wild farm, there's all of these different claims out there. We don't work as much on fish here in the States. We have a global fish research team, and we also not only work on species like salmon and tuna, but we also work on shrimp and different, different species that are aquatic life. I think the big thing around this is what we're really working towards is the humane processing of fish, because right now we see a lot of ways of processing that just is not good. There's an element that they are suffering, but it's harder to relate. And so I think a lot of people like yourself, Staci, they'll say, well, I'm not going to eat meat, but I'll eat seafood. And it can be really problematic for the animals themselves. So no surprise, there are welfare concerns, but there are some good solutions, but we just haven't seen anything take off as much as the land animal products. So there aren't as many certifications out there. I do believe Animal Welfare Approved and GAP have salmon standards, but I don't think there's any major producers in the marketplace doing it right now. So that's something.
Yeah, and just be
So are we
careful
looking-
because they can artificially color the salmon, and farm raised could mean they're eating like corn. I've heard they feed the farms will just like feed grain to the fish.
It can be really
Which is
problematic.
crazy.
Yeah. And especially for carnivorous species, there's also an issue with their diet as well. So, fish eating other fish, where are those little feed fishes coming from? Like it's such a snowball of issues. And we've also seen a lot of issues with sea lice because of the close confinement of these animals in tanks.
What
Ugh.
is sea lice? Heard of
Like
that.
it's like mites that attach to the species, the fish. And they're
Wow.
So then we
Okay.
run into antibiotics that get put into the water. So then we have this overuse of antibiotics. So
So we're going to get fish. What's our best bet? Wild caught?
well, that comes into a sustainability issue too. But wild caught, it can be good, but we also run into issues of plastic pollution with the nets that could be used. So do we go with line caught? What are some of the bycatches or byproducts that are being caught? So, with dolphins and turtles, and thinking about your phrase earlier of panicking, it feels like that with the seafood industry of like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything with this because it's so big. I think what I've seen, which has been good, is that there are some brands that they have the different certifications and seals. So like the MSC is a good one for sustainability, but it doesn't cover welfare of the animals. So with seafood, you kind of have to choose, I think, your issues of complete abstaining from it, or can you go more towards the sustainability route? But I'd say if it's something about the animals that you want to see more, if you don't want any antibiotics used or anything like that, I would ask the producers or the products that you're getting from and saying, how do you treat these fish? Do you give them antibiotics? What is it? And it tends to be, if it's cagey or if you don't get a clear answer, they usually are not doing the best standards. And so we always encourage people to reach out to them. And if you need help coding a corporate email or response, you can send it to us and we can help you say, these are the questions that you should ask and push back on them.
Great.
So it's very confusing, and it's kind of funny to see. Sometimes I'll email my favorite store and say, can you source more of this? And then they just send me something really generic back. And I'm like, okay, but you didn't answer the question. Can you actually answer? And then I usually don't get a response. But it's like I think it's good to push back a bit on the corporate mumbo jumbo at times. Yeah.
Great.
That's great.
Thank
So much
you.
good information.
Yes.
We're
thank
happy
you.
to be
Thank
your
you for
personal
this.
shopper and your decoder for a lot of these things. It can be really confusing. So we're here to help.
That's good to know. All right. Thank you, Compassion and World Farming. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So thanks for being with us today. This has been wonderful.
I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, Staci and Melissa.
We hope you enjoyed part 2 of our interview with Julia Johnson of Compassion in World Farming. The biggest compliment you can give us at Digestible is sharing this episode with others. So please subscribe, like, follow, and share. Not to sound nerdy, but Staci and I have been having way too much fun sending each other photos of the certified products that we learned about from Julia at our favorite grocery stores. We hope you've had the same success we've had in applying all of this great new knowledge. You can find all of the information from today's podcast in the show notes. Be sure to check out the label guide at CIWF.com. Let us know what else you'd like to learn about with us. And remember, don't panic, just pivot. The content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are not medical professionals, and the views expressed here are not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any health conditions. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making any health-related decisions.